Ladies and gentlemen, it's episode 10 and our guest today is Elske Hageraats. Welcome.
Thank you.
We met, I think, 2 weeks ago. There was a CSA presentation about the rising movement of Chinese CSA. It's already like 500,000 farmers are involved. And then you promoted also the Omur de Tuin,
Yes.
the garden in Reconnecting where you work for.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I asked if we can have a talk, and now you are here.
And now I'm here. Yes.
Cool. So first of all, when you came to Wageningen, you were a biology student.
Yeah.
So your bachelor was also about biology?
Yes. My bachelor was in biology
Also in Wageningen?
in Wageningen. Yeah. And I decided to come here because I liked a lot the nature and to be outside, and yes, that's why. And then Wageningen is green and has a lot of nature around, so that's why I came here.
But there was no farming background or gardening?
No, not at all. No.
Just the interest of nature?
Yes. Yeah. I also didn't grow up at a farm or something. No.
Okay, and then the years passed in Wageningen. First you completed your bachelor and you started your master also in biology.
Yes.
And already you haven't finished your master in biology, but you started parallel the rural development, or what was this? It's quite tough, I guess, two masters.
Well, yes, I actually started my master biology because I didn't know what else to do, and I was thinking to go traveling for a year, but then it was like, no, I should just continue. So I did, but along the way I really didn't like it because I was getting more and more interested in the question how to feed the world, because we see all these papers here, for our research, and then always the introduction is how are we going to feed the world.
Yeah.
And with biology, it was all very rational, like how do we produce more yield? It was a very rational approach.
Yeah.
And I had this gut feeling that there was something else. So I didn't know what to do until I did the AID, and there I met one of the girls. She was doing international development, and she told me, "Else, you should join to the course and see if it's something for you." And so I did, and I really loved it the first moment I joined. So then I said I wanted to switch, and I kind of really left biology and went into rural development, MDR. I really loved it a lot, and by the time I was starting my thesis, then they said, well, you're already so far ahead in biology, why don't you just finish it? And then I got an offer to conduct a thesis on malaria in Vietnam.
Wow.
And I said, wow, that's very interesting, and why not? And that's why I finished that one as well. It was my intention to take 2 masters, but in the end I did, and I had some really funny periods where in the morning I had biology, and it was very much on how are we going to produce more yield or something, and then in the afternoon it was sociology, and there it was what's the bigger picture, and what is it about in other viewpoints. It's
super interesting because as I told you, I also I was also a student at MDR, and I also had other background before. It was not pure, but agriculture and economics, but I had a master before in Hungary, so it was again the full rational, full material. In the whole university we didn't even have anything like organic agriculture course, nothing. It was just large scale yield and cash crops. But after that, following these courses at MDR, it was like, wow, shocking.
And I really liked it because we had the courses were very critical towards development itself. That's the funny thing, you kind of learn why development is often not good. But also you are in a small group of people, and they come from all over the world, so you have a lot of conversations about their culture, how they view things, how development goes in their country or something. And I think I learned as much, if not more, from that than from the courses. Like, it was really, really enriching me a lot to connect to all these cultures. Yeah.
Wow. And which was your favorite course within?
I think I loved the political courses, like from Peter de Vries, who was I really liked him as a teacher. But I think my favorite course was one on facilitating interactive processes, I think. And there we basically learned about group dynamics, about communication, nonviolent communication, but very much working with people. That is not just putting people together in a room and saying, okay, work, you know? It's really about, first you feel a bit shy, you don't know the people, and you have to kind of have some icebreakers and energizers. And for me, that was the first time that I thought, so it's normal to be a bit nervous when you're new in a group. I always thought it was me, and you know, and then a lot of people, like everyone's feeling that, but a lot of people know well how to hide it. Some people get very busy, and others get very quiet, and how to break the ice in order to come together and make something work. And I really liked it because it was very positive approach. It was fun, and really by connecting people in the right way, you can make big change. So I really loved that course. Yeah, because it was a totally like this approach is not pushing anything, but maybe facilitating the process, not leading it. And later on you got involved with the Rural Sociology Chair Group. It was related to your internship. Yes.
It was also this internship was here in the Netherlands about practical course.
Yeah, I first did my thesis with STC chair group, which is kind of similar to RSO. And when I came back, then I did my internship with Boerengroep, the Peasant Foundation here in Wageningen. And we connected to the Rural Sociology Chair Group, and then we started the Farm Experience Internship, the summer course on agroecology, and it was really, really nice. It was my, it was really amazing to, as a student, set up a course at the university, to feel empowered that you can do that you can shape education. And so it wasn't professors who decided how the course should look like and who were teaching. It was the students who asked, okay, this is what we want to learn, and so we are going to invite these and these people, and not just professors, but also people who have more practical experience. So farmers, peasants, activists, people from NGOs, people from companies, whoever. So you get a mixed knowledges from people, and mixed realities, and mixed viewpoints, and we also introduced in that course a lot of energizers and icebreakers. So it was not a monologue from one person talking to the class, but it was really about interaction. And we have these really nice methodologies. It comes from dragon dreaming in Brazil, and it's really about how to stay focused. So normally after 20 minutes you kind of lose focus and lose concentration, and the teacher continues talking, but you are off somewhere else, and you're thinking, I have to do the laundry, and I have to do this and that, and you don't hear anything. And it's a pity, because the story can be interesting, but you just don't hear it anymore. So if you have these little tricks that we learned with dragon dreaming, then you just take a 5-minute break, and you do, for example, a little energizer or a meditation, and then you start again, and you are super focused. So we had one day this course in dragon dreaming, And we started at 9 in the morning and we ended at 6. And the whole day we were focused.
Wow.
And that was incredible because you will never have that in university. At least
Nice.
I don't.
Yeah,
I will be like forgetting a lot of things.
And this whole summer course was for 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
First week
summer
introduction.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks practical.
Practical, yeah. So we started. Actually, the first start is really getting together students, and then we do nice brainstorm sessions what we want and we organize it. So that's all also really part of the FE is that you empower students to set up something themselves and to get familiar.
FE is farm experience.
Yes, FE. Yes, exactly. So, and then it starts. We invited many different teachers, so professors from the university, professors from other universities can be there. There can be farmers, peasants, activists, people from NGOs, everyone. And so we are sharing knowledge together in the first week. We also have some excursions to close by farms and gardens, and then everyone is then kind of prepared for that first week. So we all have like this basic background knowledge, and then for 2 weeks you go to a farm or a garden or a food forest, and you really work together with the people and you really experience it, because that's really important. We're just here reading books and we don't know how it is, that it's actually very hard work, hard labor on the farm, but also how beautiful it is to connect and to put your hands in the soil and to plant your own seeds and plants. So it's really about the experience. And then after those 2 weeks, the 4th week we come back together, and then we have an evaluation, how you experienced it, and if we want to continue with several things, it's also the moment to connect to each other and say, okay, do we want to change something? Do we want to set up something? And then that's also the moment.
And you organized it first in 2015?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
But it's still an ongoing course every summer?
Yeah,
cool, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I started
and you are still involved at the Boeren group, right?
Yes, yeah. I was 2 years, like after my internship at Boeren group, I became coordinator for 2 years. And then after that, so now I'm again volunteering, but in my little free time, because I'm working full-time in the garden now. But I'm still involved with Boerengroep and Toekomstboeren also. Yeah.
So this Boeren group is the peasant organization.
Mm-hmm.
It's about empowering peasants all over the world. Or they have this network. Mm-hmm. And it was initiated by Professor van der Ploeg, or he was there when they founded it in 71 or something?
Yes, they started it in 71, and he was not the initiator, but he was involved in the very early beginning of Boerengroep. And in that time, in the 70s, there were big demonstrations because of the low prices already then for the food and the milk that farmers got. And Boerengroep really became involved in those struggles, and they said, this is an agricultural university, and why are we not hearing about all these demonstrations and the reality of the farmers? It's very far away from our books. So they really wanted to bridge the university and the reality and the challenges from the farmers, because in the end, that's what the university is for, right? For reality and the practice, the practical side. So they started there, and they were involved with the coordination of demonstrations in the Netherlands, and it was quite big in that time, because you could study forever, so they had all the time and they could spend a lot of time in it. They had this magazine called Landbouwmaand, I think it was called, and it was really the leftist critical organization in that moment regarding agriculture. And now at this moment, it's still active. It's run by one coordinator now, Patricia, and a bunch of students who are volunteers, and there's the board. So they're all doing that besides their studies, and it's really nice because you you visit all these farms and gardens, and you talk to many people, and you there's also conferences and congresses and where they go. So it's really nice to if you're part of it, you really get a broad idea of what's going on that you don't hear within the university, and you get a nice network also.
It's interesting that you say that it was a leftist movement, because I looked into the work of Professor van der Ploeg, and he's very specialized on the depeasantration. Like the peasants were the biggest class of society, and it just shrink down.
Yeah.
And like basically what we have now in the cities, the urban population, most of them were peasants a couple of decades ago, maybe 50, 60 years ago. And this also means that 1 or 2 generations already grown up without knowing the basic skills of how to grow your food. And in that sense, this left and right thingy, because I'm from Hungary and we had the communism, so it's total left, but the same process went on because of this kolkhoz system. So the farms were destroyed and everybody had to go into the cities. So it's very interesting that left and right,
that's
the truth is somehow above or between, and it's very, we should remain very sharp when some wing starts to own a case, because maybe the other, it's just strange.
No, that's totally true. I spoke to some peasants in Nicaragua, and they were telling also the same, like their struggle with communism. Because we see often, right, that you have capitalism on one side and communism on the other side, and so but there's of course also another option, and they were talking a lot about how they were forced to leave their farm and lose their autonomy on what to grow, and even the indigenous people, it was even worse, because they had to become peasants, and they said no, we are not peasants, we are indigenous peoples. And they were really against this communist idea and government. And I think Jan Douwe van der Ploeg also really wrote an interesting book. In his book he's speaking about that there was if you have communism and capitalism and you only focus on those two, you forget that there was also the option of the peasants, who were saying, okay, should we believe in a state in the first place, or do we want to be autonomous and as much as possible, and that strength and there's not just that those two.
I'm very happy that you are bringing up these aspects, because what we are striving for nowadays, what you hear from all over coming, that sustainability, circular economy, this new kind of share economy. In a healthy local community, you have all of this, plus the peasants, even my granny's generation, even the later generations in Hungary, they could build their own house and grow their own food. And if you have the biggest class of society which is able to have their own land, build their house and grow their food, then the governments have only indeed maybe a facilitation role instead of a power role. And I also looked into your profile, and you also mentioned that food is often abused for political reasons or goals, and this is also another aspect what we don't talk about much, but it's happening every time.
Yes, it's very political. Sure. Yes. So it's there is this interesting documentary from John Pilger, and he's talking how food is a weapon, and we never speak about that in that sense. So in history, and who knows, still now we don't know, we saw that especially the US government was often giving food aid to certain countries, but they used it as a weapon in a way that they supported the regimes that they were in favor of, and they took away the food aid from the regimes they were not in favor of. And often the regimes they were in favor of were those who opened up for the world market so that they could do business with the US. And those who wanted to stay autonomous or said, no, we want to have to kind of close our borders in the sense that we want to protect our economy and our local markets, they were punished by the US by saying, okay, we quit our food aid and we quit our our relationships and everything. So it was really, for a long time, food was not aid as in let's help the hungry people, because the food aid didn't go to the poorest countries. They went to the countries with the regimes that the US was in favor of. It's very political, of course.
I don't know if you are familiar with the book of The Economic Hitman from Richard Perkins.
I've heard of it. I didn't read it, but yeah.
Yeah, he was not only into food, but more into, it was the development angle. I don't go into that. If anyone wants to look into Richard Perkins, The Economic Hitman, just look into that. Also on YouTube is available, but it's very, very similar. And the other thing is what I was also contemplating with food, like normally when there was, and still up today, when we talk about world hunger, it's mostly in conflict areas, and whenever it was a bigger hunger, like in Europe, it was during the war, and mostly in the cities, because they didn't have access to food. All of the peasants, the countryside was still living. They were still in balance, and that's why also in Hungary, but as I've heard also in the US, but maybe in every country, there is this political or mindset difference between rural and urban communities. It's a totally different world.
It is. And indeed what you said, 1 out of 9 people is suffering from hunger still in this moment. And the strange thing is that 80% of them, they live in the rural countryside, in the rural areas. And how is that possible? How can those who live in the countryside and who are working in the rural areas are the ones who suffer from hunger? And I think it's so important to see that there was this push from food crops to cash crops. So food crops are the crops that you grow to feed your own family. It's very diverse, it's small scale often. And then there was, especially after the war, the Second World War, there was this huge push to develop the world. Like I've seen in Indonesia for my thesis, and they were all pushed sometimes by force, with the military, with the shock doctrine method, towards producing cash crops. And cash crops are there for the world market. It's cotton and soy and coffee and stuff like that. So then they have to export it, and then they get money for that.
And also using the chemicals. So it was the same time with the Green Revolution.
Exactly.
Because they had to optimize the cultivation area for producing these cash crops.
So in during my thesis for MDR, I always had this fascination for the question, how are we going to feed the world? And I didn't get an answer from the biology or those kind of science at the campus here, but I did get more of an answer when I went to the Leeuwenburg social science. And I told my supervisor, I don't want to write my proposal here behind the computer. I want to go to the country and find there my topic, because I want to see what comes to me and what's there. So I went to Indonesia and I looked around, and I spoke to a lot of people, and I mailed all the universities and NGOs and spoke to peasants, and snowball effect. So then this topic came to me, and I found out there was this horrible history where 2 million people got tortured and killed, and this was backed actually by the US and the UK government. Like from after the war, they said we want to prevent a famine in the world, and we want to help the world to develop, and in a hidden way they were preparing for this overthrow of the government in '65, where there is this book from Naomi Klein called The Shock Doctrine, it's very, very interesting, because shocks are used to, when you are in shock, whether it's a natural disaster or a made, like a war involving torture especially, then people are so scared that you can just
obedient.
change. Yeah, you are very obedient, obviously, and you can change the government and change policies, and that's what happened. So the government was changed towards a government that was very in favor of the US. Actually, there were people who were got a lot of money from them and who were trained by them in school, in schools in America, and they became in favor, and they really opened up all the markets and allowed the green revolution to come in, so the industrialization and this shift from peasant agriculture and food crops towards bigger industrialized farming and cash crops. It was insane to hear these stories from the farmers, and it was really, really amazing and crazy. So when I came back, in the Netherlands here, then when I got involved with Boerengroep and food, your whole idea of food is so different, and agriculture, and you really see it as something very, very political.
I've seen it from the angle of grains, because Hungary is still a grain producer country since the 19th century, because of the Habsburgs figured out, okay, Hungary is ideal for grains, and it was still right before the Second World War. Hungary was still the quintessential home of landed aristocracy worldwide, so there were the biggest latifundias also compared to the Southern American big haciendas, and imagine that almost in the middle of Europe. And if you think about the grains, why was the grain? Because back then there was no refrigerator, nothing. They could build at these huge silos, and already back then, 200 years ago, they could play with the prices on the stock exchange, and maybe wait for a year or two if it was not too ideal for them. So the manipulation was already there. So from that angle you can also see a lot, and it goes up until today. Like if you look around on the street, most of the stuff that you can just buy as a snack is from grains. If you eat an animal, that animal was most probably eating grains.
A lot of grains, yeah.
But in the nature, you would never get exposed to that amount of concentrated grains. But it's the same with sugar. So that's what we have to be very conscious about. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's scary.
Yeah, it is scary. Yeah.
I don't know what is your opinion, but how I see the food as an entity, let's say, or as a product, that if there is no manipulation with the food, you cannot get rich. So if you produce food and you sell it on a fair price, you can have a good living from it because you work for it. Of course, it's still risky, but it's so interesting that the poor farmer is a universal thing, like everywhere. Even in Western Europe, if they are not poor, then they have debt. So, and how can it be possible that the producers all over the world are poor or they are in debt, and at the same time, from the long food chain, which is almost impossible to follow up who is part of it, because they are just so long, and where the food is coming from we just don't know. But every company, every packaging, every transportation company, every little label company which can give another certificate, they are just fine. They are not struggling. And of course, when you look around, for example, in Wageningen, and they say, oh, here is the food industry, it's business, that's why we have money for research, how good is for us and for the world. But then I just don't really understand, like, I also talked about this with Hank a couple of episodes ago, that you have these hundreds of millions of farmers who are actually doing the production, and you have the couple of billions of people and the consumers who are in chaos, because if they are totally unconscious, they just buy the food. Okay, they don't question, they just eat, and they get sick after a while. Maybe not immediately, but they develop these chronic diseases. But from the moment they watch one or two documentaries and they start to question, they really have to do a super complicated research to know what can they eat and what not.
Yeah, I think what you say is true, that we are very disconnected from our food, how it is produced, with which methods, and also it's so hard to, like the chemicals used, for example. When one person says, "Oh, this is you get cancer from this," and the other person says, "No, it's safe," and then there is this interest. Like then, for example, there is a company who is checking if Roundup from Monsanto is poisonous or not, and then it turns out no, it's not poisonous, and then it turns out that this research was funded by Monsanto, and then of course we don't understand anymore, and we don't know anymore who to trust. So there is this thing like, okay, even the governments we don't always trust anymore, because they also make mistakes, and there's a lot of lobbying, and there is companies involved, and interest and money, and of course that's hard for the consumer to see. So then a lot of consumers, when there is a scandal, like we see in China, for example, where there was poison in the food, and people got really scared, and then they wanted to make sure that the food is safe, and one way is to get again close to your food. So for example, a CSA, you don't have the supermarkets in between anymore.
So just for those who don't know what CSA is.
Community supported agriculture. And it's that you have a direct link between the producer and the consumer. So the supermarket is not in between. And it's nice because like the garden where I work is a CSA, and we have a veggie bag, so people can have a membership, and then every week you become a shareholder, and every week you can get your share of the harvest, and that's a veggie bag, and you can come there and you can see, and you see how it's grown and how it's
totally
produced.
Transparent.
It's transparent. I get a fair price from the consumer, and the consumer sees that it's produced in a good way, and that of course I would never put chemical stuff in their food, because how can I give a package of food to someone and knowing that it's not safe, So there is this relationship again between people, and we support each other.
And also the community aspect. Like as an entrepreneur, as a farmer, you have to, because that's the pitfall what these cash crop mindset have all over the world, that what you actually see is that the poor farmers, they are 100%, 150% focused on producing more of any cost. So they have sometimes loans just to pay the chemicals, or they work crazy hours just to have the more crops so they can sell it and they can have more income. But the more income is not a guarantee, because the stock prices are always changing. So when you go to the world market, there is always the people who are trading with the stocks. 2 episodes or 3 episodes ago, Gijs was here. He is an ex-banker, and he said that the average stock what you own, the average time of it is 22 seconds. So of course there are these pension funds and all of this for like a couple of years or couple of months, but with other products, other stocks, it's 22 seconds. So it's purely about manipulation, and you have a lot of algorithms, a lot of softwares for that. So whoever have access to those, they can play with the prices.
Yeah.
And the poor farmer cannot do anything about it.
No.
Meanwhile, those who really earn the money from the packaging till the whole retail company, the main thing what they do is promotion. So my question is, why cannot the farmers produce less and promote more?
Yeah.
Maybe that, and maybe, you know, yeah, that would be a kind of idea. Maybe it wouldn't work with cash crops and monoculture, but with more diversified plantation, it could work. And
Yes.
it works already with the Omurda too, right?
Yes, yeah, it's going pretty well. I mean, Esther is getting she's the owner, and she's getting her income out of it, of 1 hectare. And some other people like Hank and me and Marika, we are getting our part-time income out of it. And yeah, I mean, in this moment even it's my full-time job and income. So it works because yeah, we have this direct link. And your question about produce less and promote more, yes, that could be possible. For sure we should.
And go for the quality.
And go for the quality, yeah, for sure. The point is that both organic farmers and conventional farmers, small scale, big scale, many different ones that I spoke to, many of them are stuck in the only way they can go in their mind, and sometimes also just the way it is to go ahead with what they're already doing. Either because they are in huge debt, they got a loan from the bank, and the bank says we only give you this loan if you have this and this way of farming, which is in scaling up, bigger, more cows, bigger stables, etc. They have to do that, and others, you know, they are on the brink of survival. So if they would change anything in their farming method or in their system, and it wouldn't work, then who's gonna rescue them, in a sense, you know? Like, if you are just having enough income, you don't want to take risks, because that's too scary.
Now from agriculture we go into personal development. Like, people like to stuck in their comfort zone, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's not benefiting them. Most of the people, they cannot take that leap to actually shake it off and have this risk and learn. But I cannot elaborate on that.
You have to imagine that when you are, especially when you're living on a farm, often it's a farm that is generation to generation in your family, and when it's up to you to take a decision to make a change, even though you really believe in it, it's so scary, because if it goes wrong, it's not just one company, a random company you lose and I'll start something else. No, it's really, and that's when we go back, agriculture is not just a company that's producing food, it's really a way of life, and you are really connected to the land. I mean, where I work now at the Omurda town, I don't even own the place, and I just work there now for 3 years as volunteer intern and now as a freelancer. But if I'm on a holiday, I really miss it. I miss the land, I miss being there. I'm really connected to it. I cannot imagine if I would have grown up on a place and my grandparents would have lived there and built it up. It's so scary to make just a little decision and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we this year the Omurda town became an official CSA, and I said to Esther, okay, we're gonna ask the money really in advance. So we have the money to invest in seeds and compost and all these things that we need to have on the beginning of the year. And we're gonna raise the price of the veggie bags with €1, because that price was set 7 years ago. So it's fair now, we can raise it with just €1 a week. and she was so scared to make that change. She said, yeah, what if people find it too expensive, and I don't know. And she was really, really scared. Just this little, and it's true, because if everyone would say, this is totally crazy decision, we're gonna leave you, for example, and she wouldn't have customers anymore, then 20 years of work will be lost. So it is really, really, really scary to make changes, especially when it's a company that is not really a company, but it's really your life. Yeah. So in that sense, I think if we want to support farmers making changes, it should also really be a community who supports it. So the farmer is not the only one who is bearing the risk, because that's not fair.
Indeed.
Yeah, to ask.
Yeah, but from the moment the bank is there and there's other companies there with their own little packages to have a proper industrial farming, then it's human farming from that moment. It's it's crazy, because let's go back a little bit to the rural sociology and all of these studies. Like, after completing those degrees, master degrees in rural sociology or rural development, it's just crazy to actually find a place to work or whatever, or to where can I use it. I have still this dilemma sometimes. For me, it's pretty much, it became an ethical thing that I don't agree what certain companies do, so I don't want to work there. I don't want to compromise myself. And for example, that's why I organized last year this social entrepreneurship gathering to find some alternatives. And indeed, also there some participants said that it's just so crazy that if you want to do something good or something reasonable, then you are stuck.
Yeah, that's true. I think I like, people around me have the same problem. Like, when you're done with university, you are firstly trained very theoretical and not practical. Yeah. So the ambachten,
the craft work.
There is not really a market for it so much anymore as in the past, in the first place. But I think there is really this disconnection between university and practice. So when I was done with when I graduated from MDR, my job could have been to work with farmers and support them and maybe make innovations, but I didn't even know how to grow a potato. And I felt like, what's this? How can I go to a farm and tell farmers what to do, or like work together with them, when I've never even experienced how it is to be a farmer. And so indeed, like, the only companies where I could go were companies that I was not really feeling like, I want to support that. And I was very lucky that I find my way. I followed my dream, and it was very scary sometimes, very, very scary, because after my 2 studies, I figured out I wanted to work on the land. First it was an ideological thing, saying I do not anymore want to support industries that are guilty of land grabs and exploiting people in the third world. So I want to produce my own food and give people around me the option to not invest their euro in negative bad and industries, but in a fairly produced product. So that's, first I started a kind of in an ideological way, and when I started to work more and more as a volunteer on the farm, I also realized, wow, after a day of work I feel satisfied, and I feel I did something nice, and I am tired because it's hard work, but I'm happy, and it's nice to be in the sun and in the wind, and I hear the birds, and I'm working with people. There's no stress, and I was like, this is, it's really good.
It's good for your health.
It's good for
my granny is 95 and she's still in the garden.
Yes, exactly, And then I started to understand more and more, you know, when we talk about agroecology as a way of life, and I thought, yeah, it is really a way of life. It's where I, as a human being, belong. I belong on the land where we have been working and living like that for thousands of years. It's in our DNA. Like, you know, like birds are making nests, we are working the land. It's very, I don't know, it's part of who we are. But it was hard because as a toekomstboer, a future farmer, I had no access to the knowledge, because the practical knowledge, no one ever told me how to grow anything. I only knew theory from books, so no access to practical knowledge. Then no access to land, because 1 hectare in the Netherlands is 80,000 euros.
Wow.
So it's impossible for me to pay with the study debt. You know, I mean, I'm already glad if I can pay that back. And then there is the access to the market, which is very difficult. You know, we are, as a human being, we are, if we divide it in that sense, we are a consumer on the one hand who wants cheap food as possible, and on the other hand we are a citizen who wants sustainability, and you know, but it's in one person. But if you want sustainability, it means you have to pay a bit more for your food, because cheap food is not for nothing cheap. You know, it's cheap because it's.
I always say that there is no such a thing like cheap food, because you have to pay the price. Even your environment, or your health, or you live shorter, or maybe you can you can buy cheap ingredients, but then it will take your time to prepare the food. So you cannot bypass.
No, exactly. No, if you you know, I could say, okay, I'm not gonna weed anymore, I'm not doing any weeding, I just buy chemicals and kill everything, and then it's easy. I only have to spend some time harvesting, that's it. And then you have your cheap food, but you're not paying the price that it is doing to the soil and to the environment and to our health and all these things, you know. So it takes time. If you want to produce food in a fair way for us, for you, for the farmers, for our health, for the consumers' health, for the environment, you need to pay a fair price for it. And it doesn't have to be extremely expensive. You know, there is also food that is like totally too much expensive. Come on. That's also not the idea, because it should be affordable for everyone, right? But this really, really cheap food, it's, especially since I started working on the land myself, if I now go to buy something, I'm also really thinking in terms of, what am I stimulating by putting my euro into something? Where do I put my euro in? Because where you give your money to, that is what you may grow, right? If you give it to a peasant farmer, then you are supporting that way of production. If you give it to a very cheap...
it's like energy.
Yeah, exactly.
In the universe.
In a sense it is.
So that's what the big companies, what we are critical about, they are grabbing the energy of society and people and the souls. And I don't know how deep are you into food, because there is another level with the gut microbiome. Then it's called also our second brain. Then it has even more hormonal activity than our brain. So what you eat is pretty much what you are, and also these emotions, feelings, what you have, it can be pretty much related to what you just ate that day. So it goes, if anyone is listening and is getting confused or scared about food, yes, it is complicated, and it goes even deeper and more complicated.
I don't know a lot about it. I only know this one study that I read, that they had mice and they changed their bacteria culture in their guts.
Fecal transportation, they have also that.
I didn't know exactly what they did, but
it could be.
I know that there are neurons that are connected from the gut to the brain, and it made the mice, like they did this test and they had to walk over a thin line to the other side, and one part of the mice, they were fine, they did it, and the other didn't dare to do it, so it really made them more anxious, and it was only changing the bacteria in their gut. So yeah, there is a connection to the brain. Yeah, so I'm not into that too much, but I've read this article.
We are in Wageningen, so we can ask around.
Yes, exactly.
And there are certainly many researches about that. But let's talk a bit about the toekomstboeren, or the future farmers, because you mentioned them, and I also heard about them, or this organization from Henk, but I don't know much about.
Yeah, so it all started quite some years ago when I was doing my internship at Boerengroep, and we started with the VE. Then in the same time there were Joris and Juliana, and they were also studying here, and they had this hippie van, and they went all over Europe to make small videos from young people mainly who started farming again. It's called Future Farmers in the Spotlight. You can see it online, all the movies, and they're really inspiring. It was really nice. And when they came back, they thought, okay, we made these nice, inspiring movies. What else can we do to support this? Like there's nothing really about people going back into agriculture again. And so they decided, let's start up something. And Boerengroep got involved, and I think otherwise as well. And some people came together, and we started Toekomstboeren, which is future farmers. And we started to just visit farms and gardens and people who wanted to start again in agriculture, and we wrote stories about them. And we published it online and also in magazines. And it was really first about inspiring people. That, what I told you, like I wanted to start farming, but I had no access to knowledge, no access to the market, no access to land. So I guess it's impossible. No, it is possible, but you have to be very creative. So we wanted to really inspire people and show people that it can work if you really want to go for it. So we started that, and later on we became part of La Via Campesina, and so we also got connected to organizations and NGOs throughout the whole world. Like I think 80 countries are part of them, and that was really, really nice. So we went for Toekomstboeren to the Nyeleni conference on food sovereignty, and it was super inspiring to hear that actually our struggle to land, access to land, for example, and loss of biodiversity and loss of knowledge is a struggle everywhere. So we all of a sudden we were there, and you were like one big family, you feel very connected because they have the same passion for the land, for seeds, for plants, for animals, and the same challenges also in of course different ways. Like a peasant in Latin America is different than being a peasant here in the Netherlands, but in a sense we understand each other, we speak the same language actually. It's
interesting because when I was growing up in Hungary, the agriculture was always a topic in the news and everywhere, and the local farmers who don't follow international news or don't travel, they think that in other countries it's different. They think that in Western Europe it's different. They're the rich farmers, they have the rich consumers, so they figured it out. But when I came here, I've heard that it's a universal thing that there are poor farmers everywhere, and even here it's a struggle with the land and everything. It gave me a totally different feeling and aspect of like okay, what is happening? That is like it's by design. It's not a country specific thing. It's more about certain regulations, certain the banking system, the chemical companies, or the big meat companies. All of them are they set the rules of the game, and it's like a monopoly pretty much. Yeah, it's true. I spoke to peasants in other countries, and they all have the idea that the Netherlands is like heaven, and we're all rich and it's nice, and of course I am very, very happy and grateful that I am in this position of not having to worry about my food and having a roof above my head, obviously. But I told them
we have lost 6 out of 7 farms in the Netherlands since the 1950s. And at this moment, we are losing 22 farms every day in the Netherlands alone. And this is not because we don't have a good infrastructure, we don't have proper education, because the yields are really bad, because we have no proper roads to the city. We all have that. It's not because of a lack of technology. The Netherlands is the big example of high-tech agriculture. It's really about the price. We are like the costs are increasing and the prices are going down, and it's hard to make a living. Like many farmers are now in debt. They can only grow bigger if the price goes down that they get for a liter of milk, for example. The only way to survive is to produce more milk. So you have to go to the bank, get a loan, build more stables, have more cows, and then you can just survive.
But this is the same patterns what we discussed, that it's just not a viable way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really about a fair price and a fair income. And also when we talk about what I was saying, 1 out of 9 people are suffering from hunger, 80% of them live in the countryside. When I was meeting people from La Via Campesina in this conference, and they wrote together a declaration, the Nileni Declaration, what it was that they said, and they were people from 80 countries representing a lot of peasants. And what these people said, so the rural poor, the people who are hungry, what they said was not that they wanted to be fed by the Western world, that they wanted technologies from Wageningen University. They said we want food sovereignty, and we are fighting against things like land grabbing, against the privatization of our land, of our water, of our seeds, of the push of the green revolution, of the shift from food crops to cash crops, of corrupt governments. That's what they wanted to fight against. They didn't ask for more food from the West or to help them in that way. It's what we were talking about before we started this podcast, that a lot of companies are selling their techniques, their technologies, whether it's about agricultural technologies or seeds. They are selling it as if they are doing such a good thing to help the poor people, but it's just a nice business trick to sell their products. Because if you really want to help the rural poor, then why don't you ask them what they want? Why don't you go to them and say, what is it that you need? And you will hear a totally different answer than, we want more food, or we want technologies, because technologies and patented seeds is only going to make them more dependent from the world market, and they want to be less dependent from that. So I think everyone who wants to do something good and help the poor people, go to them and ask, go into conversation with them, and don't pretend like you are the knowledgeable white person who knows what the world needs.
But we also have to, like, for example, now we are using microphones, cameras and stuff, so it's nothing about technology itself. The farming in a decentralized way, or not cash crops but CSA, using some technology like an app or sensor or whatever, it can make it even fun and much easier than 10, 20 or 15 years ago or 100 years ago. So because that's what I also see a little bit, that is pretty much a little bit polarized also in Wageningen, and one is just the ag tech technocrats, and the others almost trying to solve without any technology, because they're just so disgusted about the whole enslavement through the technologies and the whole financial package which comes with the technology, that they just don't want it. But I think there is also some middle way or something between what we can actually use, because there are many cool people. Not everybody is greedy and super technocrat robot face guy, but there are some very bright minds around who actually finding out cool stuff. Of course, the financial part, actually 2 weeks ago we were talking about with Eric Groen from POW, that it's only the complicated technology is financed because it generates the need for bank loans and the payback. But there are many other good and usable technologies, little, small. Yeah.
Of course, I mean, with technologies, I really mean these really the companies who are really aiming at large-scale agriculture and making money of that. Yeah. So they really, you can't really make a lot of money on peasantry, I think. So they focus on really big scale. That's what I mean. But obviously, I'm not against technology because my wheelbarrow is technology and my hoe is technology. And if I could use some kind of app that shows me which areas of the field need irrigation, why not? That makes life better, right? As long as we don't have technology replacing an income of someone, so someone's job, and as long as technology doesn't make us very dependent, in terms of
technology.
on the input on that technology. And there are people doing great things. Like you have this group in France, I think they're called Atelier Paysan, and they are producing themselves a kind of technologies. They take tools or machines and they kind of rebuild them so they fit that farm size, and it's often really about peasant farming. And then they upload this design on the internet, and everyone is free to download it again and to make it themselves. So it's
DIY. There is a lot of DIY stuff out there. So
exactly.
And the other thing is
amazing.
The Western mindset. They want, or we want. I don't know if I belong to the Western world, but it's about comfort. But all of these guys, the personal development gurus and stuff, and CEOs, and these people like the Iceman behind you, and even the doctors, they say comfort is killing us. For example, with gardening, you are exposed to stuff what is good for you in the end. But if you avoid all of that because you just want to have a comfortable lifestyle and have everything ready, then it's not good for you.
No, I agree. I think when I was studying biology and I wasn't into farming yet so much, I actually was quite depressed. I felt very. I didn't have an aim. I didn't know where I wanted to go, what I liked. Everything around me didn't really make me enthusiastic, and I was really I remember I had this dream that I was walking on the highway and everyone was just going very fast next to me, going to their destination, and I just wanted to take the exit, but I couldn't. I felt stuck, if I look back now, I can totally understand why, because I think again, like as a human being, you are creative. You want to create things like the ambachten, the handcraft, working on the land, being outside in the sun and the air, working with your body and not just with your mind. When I was only studying, writing my thesis, I was sitting, not doing anything. I was just typing and I was in my head, and then I got these panic attacks sometimes, and I really didn't like it. And then I went to the field and I work with my body again, not only with my mind, and I breathe the air and I see plants grow and I feel the sun, and it's really different.
And you don't have to still go at 9 o'clock to the gym because it's still open till 10:30 or something.
And to make things again yourself, to I don't know, to carve your own spoon or do something with wood, or to make your own clothes or to grow your own food. I don't know why, but apparently it gives us satisfaction and makes us
we
human.
Are creators. We are creators.
And we lost that, I think, because we're a bit isolated from that creativity.
So what's the next step? Now you are kind of settled at the Ommoordetijn, but while I was reading your profile, I've also seen some plans about a future farm at some point.
Yeah, maybe. I would like to have in the end my own farm, hopefully, with some friends. That would be nice. But yeah, there's the thing with the money. And well, a short-term dream is to start a kind of winter course at Onweerdetuin about agroecology in practice, and that's a kind of thing we want to do. But in the end, I hope to really live like a peasant on my own farm and be more self-sufficient. Yeah.
Are you also familiar with the Earthship movement?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure if the second-hand tires are a good idea, but the whole principle is that when you build your house, it's going to take care of you. So that part I really like.
Yeah, I would love to build my own house, but I think I would prefer to build it from wood.
Yeah.
But small, and it doesn't need to be big, and have a nice plot of land with some nature around it, and my own. Yeah, I would really like to build my own house, to learn it. I have no idea how to do it, but to learn that, it's a nice process.
YouTube University.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And for the summer, now from this week, the season is on.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be tough, or not?
It's 40 hours a week at least, and sometimes more when there's events. It's nice, and we had our first veggie bags this week that we delivered at the farm and at pickup points here in Wageningen. It's amazing. Everything.
So you have the one person's veggie bag, the two persons, and the family.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So you can choose what you want, and if you are not sure, you can always take a proefpakket, so try out and for 4 weeks, and if you like it, then you can continue.
Cool. And the website is we're gonna put all of the links in the description.
Onweerdetuin.nl. Yes. And boerengroep.nl and toekomstboeren.nl. All nice places to visit. Yes.
Yeah.
And always feel free to pass by every Wednesday and Saturday in the garden. We have a terrace with a soup that we make from products and quiche, and you can buy there your vegetables and little plants and seeds, and so it's nice.
Cool.
Yes.
So thank you very much for the fascinating conversation.
Thank you too for inviting.
Bye bye people.
Bye bye.
Ciao ciao. Wow.